You wake up every morning already defeated, not because the world beat you, but because your mind did. Before your feet touch the ground, before your lungs even take a full breath, before reality has a chance to test you, you've already told yourself you're weak. You call it anxiety. I call it surrender. Before we go deeper, subscribe now, because what you're about to hear will either offend your weakness or awaken something monumental inside you. Anxiety is not a harmless emotion. It is not your friend. It is not a personality trait. It is a biological alarm screaming one sentence: you do not believe you can survive. Understand this. Your ancestors stood in front of predators with teeth the size of your fingers. They stood in front of enemies who wanted their blood on the dirt. They faced starvation, war, chaos, extinction, and they did not have the luxury to sit there and overthink. They acted because hesitation meant death. But you sit in a climate-controlled room, you stare at a glowing screen, and you convince yourself that sending a message, starting a business, speaking your mind, walking into a room is somehow more terrifying than death itself. This is not reality. This is psychological decay. Anxiety is the symptom of a man who has lost his internal authority. Let me explain something brutal. Your brain is a weapon, but right now, it's pointed at you. Every time you hesitate, every time you overanalyze, every time you imagine failure before action, you are firing bullets into your own potential. You are committing slow spiritual suicide, because anxiety doesn't just stop you once. It trains you, it conditions you, it teaches your nervous system that retreat is safety. And once retreat becomes safety, conquest becomes impossible. You need to understand the biological truth. Your nervous system adapts to whatever you repeat. If you repeat courage, you become dangerous. If you repeat hesitation, you become fragile. And fragility is punished without mercy. The world does not care about your internal fears. The world responds to your external actions. This is war, not metaphorically, literally. Every day you are in psychological combat. There are men out there right now with less intelligence than you, less talent than you, less opportunity than you, but they are conquering everything you want. Why? Because they move while you freeze. Action destroys anxiety. Not thinking, not analyzing, not waiting. Action. Imagine two soldiers on a battlefield. One is breathing heavily, heart racing, adrenaline flooding his veins. He feels fear, but he moves forward anyway. The other soldier feels the exact same fear, but he freezes. They both feel anxiety, but only one survives. The difference is not emotion. The difference is authority. The first soldier does not negotiate with fear. He commands himself. He says, "Move," and his body obeys. You do not lack confidence. You lack obedience to yourself. Your mind gives an order. Go to the gym, you hesitate. Start the business, you hesitate. Speak the truth, you hesitate. Every hesitation is a vote for weakness, a vote for insignificance, a vote for a smaller life. You think anxiety is protecting you. It is imprisoning you, because the most dangerous prison is the one without bars, the one where the door is open, but you are too afraid to walk through it. Let me tell you something nobody wants to admit. Anxiety feels safer than action. Because action creates consequences. Action creates consequences. Action creates judgment. Action creates risk. And weak minds prefer predictable, suffering over unpredictable conquest. They would rather live in guaranteed mediocrity than risk temporary failure for permanent dominance. This is the psychology of the average man. He builds a cage, then convinces himself it's a home. But you're not average. You cannot afford average thoughts, because average thoughts create average realities. Understand this deeply. Your anxiety is not random. It is the direct result of broken self-trust. Every time you promised yourself you would do something and didn't, you weakened your authority. Every time you said, "I'll start tomorrow," and didn't, you taught your brain that your words mean nothing. And when your words mean nothing, your commands mean nothing. Your commands mean nothing. And when your commands mean nothing, your mind becomes chaos. Anxiety is chaos. Confidence is order. Confidence is not built by motivation. Confidence is built by evidence. Evidence that you do what you say. Evidence that you move when commanded. Evidence that you act regardless of emotional resistance. This is why weak men chase motivation. Strong men build discipline. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is biological. Motivation disappears when it's inconvenient. Discipline executes regardless. Your nervous system does not respect your intentions. It respects your patterns. If your pattern is hesitation, your identity becomes hesitation. If your pattern is action, your identity becomes action. This is evolution happening in real time. You're either evolving into something formidable or devolving into something forgettable. There is no neutral state. Every day you delay, you reinforce weakness. Every day you act, you reinforce power. This is not motivational nonsense. This is neurological programming. Your brain is constantly asking one question: can I trust you? And right now, your brain does not trust you because you have betrayed yourself too many times. You said you would become stronger. You didn't. You said you would become disciplined. You didn't. You said you would become disciplined. You didn't. You said you would become fearless. You didn't. So your brain adapted. It stopped believing you, and anxiety filled the vacuum because when there is no internal leader, fear becomes a leader. You must reclaim authority. Not tomorrow, now. Authority begins with small victories, not massive ones, small ones. Because authority is built through proof. When you wake up and move immediately, you prove something when you do the hard thing first. You prove something when you act without negotiation. You prove something. Every proof something, your internal command structure. Every proof reduces anxiety because anxiety cannot exist in a mind that trusts itself. Anxiety thrives in uncertainty. Certainty kills it. Certainty is built through action, not thoughts, not affirmations, not visualization, execution. Understand this analogy. Your mind is a kingdom. Right now, it is leaderless. Different voices are fighting for control. Fear says retreat. Comfort says delay. Doubt says quit. And because there is no king, chaos reigns. You must become the king. And a king does not negotiate with peasants. A king commands. A king decides. A king acts. Immediately, without hesitation, without apology, because hesitation signals weakness, and weakness invites rebellion. Your anxiety is rebellion against your authority. You allowed it to grow, you allowed it to speak, you allowed it to command you. That ends now, because the moment you act despite fear, you send a signal that says, I am in control, and your nervous system listens. Your identity shifts. Not instantly, but progressively. Every act of courage is a brick. Every act of discipline is a weapon. Every act of execution is a declaration of war against weakness. You do not eliminate anxiety by waiting for courage. You eliminate anxiety by proving courage unnecessary. Courage is overrated. Obedience is superior. You do not need to feel ready. You need to move because readiness is a myth. Nobody is ready. The men you admire, the men who dominate industries, the men who control reality. They were afraid, but they moved anyway, and through movement, they became something else, something harder, something colder, something immune. Because exposure destroys fear, avoidance feeds it. Every time you avoid something, you make it bigger. Every time you face something, you make it smaller. This is universal law, not philosophy, biology. Your nervous system recalibrates based on exposure. The more you face discomfort, the less threatening it becomes. The more you avoid discomfort, the more threatening everything becomes, until eventually, even small actions feel impossible. This is how weak men are created, not through trauma, through avoidance, through hesitation, through surrender disguised as self-protection. But you are not here to be protected. You are here to conquer. And conquest requires discomfort. Conquest requires pressure. Conquest requires voluntary suffering. Because pressure reveals truth. Pressure reveals who you really are, not who you pretend to be, not who you wish to be, who you actually are. And right now, if anxiety controls you, it means you have not yet forged yourself into something unbreakable. But that can change, not through thinking, through execution, immediate, relentless, uncompromising execution. Because the moment you realize anxiety is not an enemy, but a test, everything shifts. Anxiety is the doorway. Most people stand outside it forever. You walk through it, and on the other side, you become someone your past self wouldn't recognize. Someone who does not ask for permission. Someone who does not wait for approval. Someone who does not wait for approval. Someone who does not negotiate with fear. Someone who moves, even when every cell screams to stop. And in that moment, you stop being a victim of your mind and become its commander. Because the truth nobody has the courage to tell you is this: anxiety is not the disease. It is the symptom of a deeper fracture. A fracture between who you are and who you know you could be. There is a version of you that exists right now, not in fantasy, not in imagination, in biological potential. A version of you that moves instantly, decides instantly, acts instantly. A version of you that does not sit there negotiating with comfort like a beggar asking permission to breathe. But every day you delay, every day you hesitate, every day you choose comfort over conquest. You create distance between you and that version. And your nervous system feels it. It knows you are capable of more. It knows you are betraying your own design. And that internal conflict, that internal contradiction is what you call anxiety. It is the tension between your current identity and your true capacity. Understand this, at the deepest level, weakness creates noise. Strength creates silence. Have you ever noticed something? When a man knows exactly what he must do, he becomes calm, not because life is easy, but because his direction is clear. Clarity eliminates anxiety, confusion feeds it, and confusion is not accidental. Confusion is the result of avoiding hard decisions, because every decision eliminates possibilities, and weak minds are addicted to keeping doors open. They want safety nets, backup plans, escape routes, but escape routes weaken commitment, and weak commitment creates fragile minds. Imagine a predator hunting. It does not hesitate, it does not question its worth. It does not sit there wondering if it deserves to eat. It moves directly, efficiently, decisively, because nature rewards certainty and punishes hesitation. You are not separate from nature. You are subject to its laws, and one of its oldest laws is this: indecision is decay. Decision is power. Every time you delay a decision, you drain your nervous system, you create internal friction, you create resistance. And that resistance manifests as anxiety because your brain is waiting for command, but you never give it one, so it stays in limbo, suspended between action and inaction, and limbo is torture. Limbo is psychological suffocation because your mind was designed for movement, not stagnation. Movement creates momentum. Momentum creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence, creates dominance. This is the chain reaction of power, but it begins with one thing, one brutal thing most people refuse to do: act without emotional permission. You have been trained to believe you must feel ready. You have been conditioned to believe you must feel confidence comes first. This is a lie. Confidence comes after. Confidence is the reward, not the requirement. Action is the requirement. The man who waits to feel confident will die waiting, because confidence is forged in fire, not comfort. Every uncomfortable action you take rewires your nervous system. It teaches your brain something new. It teaches your brain that discomfort is not fatal. It teaches your brain that fear is survivable. It teaches your brain that you are capable, and capability destroys anxiety because anxiety survives on perceived helplessness. The moment you prove capability, anxiety begins to starve. But most people never reach that point because they retreat too early. They feel discomfort and they interpret it as danger, but discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. Discomfort is danger. Discomfort is transformation in progress. Your muscles do not grow in comfort, they grow under tension. Your muscles do not grow in comfort, they grow under tension. Mind follows the same law. It grows under pressure. Pressure is not your enemy. Pressure is your sculptor. It shapes you, refines you, hardens you, but only if you endure it. Only if you face it. Only if you stop running. Because every time you run, you send a message that says, I am not capable. And your nervous system believes you. It adapts to that belief. It makes you smaller, slower, weaker, more fragile, until eventually you become dependent on safety, dependent on certainty, dependent on comfort. And dependence is the opposite of power. Power is self-sufficiency. Power is internal certainty. Power is the ability to move without guarantees, because guarantees do not exist. The only guarantee is decay if you do nothing. Everything in existence either grows or deteriorates. There is no preservation. There is no pause. You are either building strength or building weakness, and anxiety is the signal of accumulated weakness. Accumulated hesitation, accumulated self-betrayal. But the moment you reverse the pattern, the moment you begin executing without negotiation, something shifts. At first it feels unnatural, foreign. Your nervous system resists because S for six cock to weakness. It is 6 for 6 cock to hesitation. It is To 6 per 6 gok to korad zakash, to surrender. But repetition overrides resistance. Execution overrides fear. Authority overrides chaos. You must become relentless, not emotionally, biologically. Execution must become relentless, not thinking, not waiting, not emotionally, analyzing, moving. Because movement eliminates uncertainty. Movement creates feedback. Feedback creates learning. Learning creates adaptation. Adaptation creates superiority. This is how evolution works, not just in species and individuals. Every action you take evolves you. Every hesitation devolves you. And over time, these small decisions compound. They create two different identities. One becomes formidable, the other becomes insignificant. And the difference was never talent, never genetics, never luck. It was obedience, obedience to action, obedience to execution, obedience to execution, internal command. Because the strongest men are not the ones who feel no fear. They are the ones who have eliminated hesitation. They feel fear, but fear does not control their behavior. Fear does not influence their decisions. Fear does not alter their trajectory. Fear becomes irrelevant. Background noise, static. Power is not the absence of fear. Power is the absence of negotiation with fear. And once you reach that state, anxiety loses its authority. It becomes a sensation, not a command. It becomes information, not control. And you begin to understand something profound. You begin to understand something profound. You begin to understand that anxiety was never the enemy. It was the test of your authority, the test of whether you would remain a servant to your impulses or become their master. Most people fail this test, not because they are incapable, but because they never realize what is happening. They think anxiety is something to be cured, something to be removed, something external. But anxiety is internal hierarchy disorder. It is your mind operating without a clear leader. And the moment you step into leadership, the moment you establish absolute internal authority, everything reorganizes. Everything reorganizes. Aligns, everything obeys, because your nervous system is waiting for certainty, waiting for command, waiting for you to decide. That hesitation is no longer acceptable. That weakness is no longer tolerated. That delay is no longer an option. And the moment you reach that decision, not LeBron emotionally, but definitively, you cross a line. A line most people never cross. A line between reacting to reality and controlling it, because the man who controls himself controls his environment, and the man who cannot control himself will be controlled by everything. By emotions, circumstances, by fear, by anxiety. But once you establish internal dominance, external dominance becomes inevitable, because reality bends to those who move without hesitation. Reality rewards certainty. Reality rewards execution. Reality rewards authority. And authority begins in the mind, not in the world, not in other people, inside you, where every command is either obeyed or ignored. And every time you obey yourself, you become stronger. And every time you ignore yourself, you become weaker, until eventually you become one of two things: a man whose mind obeys him instantly, or a man whose mind betrays him constantly. And that decision is being made right now, in this moment, by what you choose to do next. And this is where everything separates. This is where the illusion ends. Because up until now, you've been living under a false authority. You thought anxiety was your master. You thought fear was your commander. You thought hesitation was your nature. But none of that was ever true. It was conditioning. It was repetition. It was the slow accumulation of moments where you chose comfort over conquest, until comfort became your identity. But identity is not permanent. Identity is built, and anything built can be rebuilt. Right now, in this moment, there is no audience. There is no applause. There is no external validation waiting for you. There is only you and the silent contract between you and yourself. This is where weak men lie. They promise themselves change, then betray themselves. Hours later, they wait for the perfect mood, the perfect timing, the perfect emotional states. But perfection is a myth designed to keep you stationary. Power is built in imperfect action. Power is built in movement despite resistance, because resistance is proof that you are approaching the edge of your current identity. Proof that you are confronting the barrier that separates who you are from who you could become. Most people step back when they feel resistance. They interpret resistance as a stop sign, but resistance is not a stop sign. It is a gate, and gates are meant to be broken. Understand this final truth. Your mind will test you, not once, not twice, but daily. It will offer you comfort. It will offer you delay. It will offer you excuses that sound logical, reasonable, intelligent. But beneath every excuse is the same reality: surrender. And every time you accept that surrender, you reinforce weakness. But every time you reject it, every time you move anyway, you reinforce authority. This is how you destroy anxiety. Not in one moment, but in thousands of moments. Small decisions, silent victories, private acts of discipline no one will ever see, because the real battle was never external. It was never the world. It was never other people. It was never other people. You, and the moment you realize that, the moment you stop waiting to feel different and start choosing to act different, everything changes. Your nervous system adapts. Your identity evolves. Your presence hardens. You stop seeing obstacles as threats. You start seeing them as territory. Waiting to be claimed. You stop asking for certainty. You start creating certainty. Do movement, do action, do execution, until one day something becomes undeniable. The voice of hesitation goes silent. Not because fear disappeared, but because it lost its authority. It no longer commands you. It no longer controls you. It no longer defines you. You became stronger than it. You became the commander. And once you become the commander of your own mind, there is nothing left that can enslave you. Not fear, not doubt, not anxiety, because the man who has conquered himself has already conquered the hardest battlefield he will ever face.